network, as I said, is 1. For a mixed-use network, it is 3. One way of setting a network for private use only is to go and set its roll number to 1. And one way of prioritizing which of the private networks will be used for cluster share volume and heartbeat traffic is to go and manually set its metric, which is something that you can do by typing, for instance, prop cluster net, name of the cluster network, prop for property, and let's select the private, 2, and then metric equal, for instance, 1201. And if we now go and view the properties for cluster network 2, we can see that it's still private, so the roll number is still 1. The metric value has been set to a higher number, and the autometric property has been set to 0 to reflect the fact that I have set this value manually. Whilst if I want the cluster to configure that value for me, I will go and do a cluster network 2 prop autometric equal 1, and this will reset the weight to 1000, in this case of one private network only. So by using network metrics appropriately, one can prioritize the order in which private networks are used for heartbeat communication and CSV traffic. The network that is used for live migration is not the network that is used for CSV traffic. By default, it's, as I said, the second lowest metric one. In this simple configuration, the second lowest metric is my public network that has a metric value of 10,000 something, which I set manually as well. Whilst the lowest metric one is the private network with 1000. One last thing to notice is if you want to make sure that a particular network interface is ignored by the cluster, you set its roll number to 0, which you can do, in this case particularly, for instance, prop roll equal 0. And then you can see that cluster network 2 has been assigned a value of 10,000 and the roll of 0, so it's ignored by the cluster, and you can channel the traffic that you want. It's still available for use by other applications and for other functions, for instance, to put iSCSI traffic on. Now, if we go and verify what has happened in the GUI, we'll see that my cluster network number 2 is now not available for cluster traffic. Now, I don't want to really mess up my cluster, so I will go and restore it for use as a private network. I will do a property roll equal 1. Let's verify that it went well. And here we go. It's back to being a private network only. So in summary, when you have live migration and cluster share volume configured, our recommendation for production clusters is that you have a public network for use with the virtual machines. This public network will have a roll number of 3 and a metric of 10,000 or more if you have more than one public network interface. A private network for CSV and cluster communication traffic. This private network will have a roll number of 1 and a metric of 1,000 or more in increments of 100. if you have more than one private network interface. One network dedicated to live migration and ignored by the cluster, so it will have a roll number of 0 and a metric of 10,000 or more. And a network dedicated to iSCSI traffic, again ignored by the cluster, so with a roll number of 0. Networks are used in metric order. The network with the lowest metric value is picked first for CSV and cluster communication. The second lowest metric network is used by default for live migration. Switching between networks in order of metric values is automatic. So if a particular network should become unavailable, the next lowest one is picked automatically, and when it becomes available again, traffic is switched to the lowest metric network available at that point in time. I hope this clarifies any doubt with the configuration of networks for live migration and cluster share volumes. Thank you.